All right.
Okay.
We are here.
Yes, sir. Shalom, shalom. Welcome and welcome to one and all. Thank you for joining us on the midweek MIDrash. And we are number 209 in our studies, currently looking into the life of Shimshon, Samson, from the book of Judges. We're up to chapter 16. We're late in the story, but you can always catch up. We'll see, as I said, that's number 209. You go back, you can see that everything's labeled and listed, so by subject matter. So again, we're grateful that you would join us. Very, very, very happy about that. And once again, we have our brother Herman with the great detail in the Hebrew, and we're thankful that you would join us, whether you're doing live, which is great because you can chat with us, let us know what you're thinking, and also just good to touch base with y'all.
Y'all.
Up with y'all.
Well, Wanda has signed on. Welcome, Wanda.
Vandy, how goes it for you? Okay, we need to put that thing. Oh no, we'll do that. Let's see, because if I hit the chat, I can't see us. Okay, shalom, Wandy. Good to see you. Very muchly goodly. So, we are going to get started momentarily as we take it up in chapter 16, verse 13. In
Correct,
after a review, a brief review, and we're glad that you're joining with us.
Henry B.
Hey, Hanky, hola to Hanky.
Welcome, Hank.
I never knew him as Henry B, but Henry B, okay to me.
Yes.
Hank B, even better. And we pray that all is well with you, Hank, in your ministry down south. And I pray that your health and everything is all tov. Good. And we love that you come in and check in with us. And also, you always manage to add a couple of crucial points in your chatting. And again, we thank you for that, brother man. Amen. So before we get started, I'm going to ask Patricia if you would please say our opening prayer.
Okay. Our Father in sin, we honor you and praise you for who you are. And great is your faithfulness unto us. We thank you that we could come together this Wednesday night via this phone line, and that we still have the freedom to do. I ask you to bless each family here tonight.
Yes,
and thank you for all the blessings you bestow upon us each day. Bless and protect each one of us. You are so worthy to be praised.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for all things. To Yeshua be all glory, honor, and praise. Amen.
Amen to that.
And Pat, also, if you get your whatchamacallit, not the tablet. If you get your tablet fixed, you can actually go on YouTube, and you can actually see. I was going to call Felix. Actually, see Herman and my Punim as we chat. You get to see the teachings on the board there. So anyway,
Hadassah signed on. Welcome, Hadassah.
We're being inundated by Mishpacha and Havarim.
Yeah.
Amen. I might have to repeat this later on down the line, but I accidentally blocked somebody previous Shabbat. I was looking at one of his chat points, and I pushed something accidentally. And this past Sabbath, he was saying, "Hey, I can't get on." He was telling a friend who had joined also, and I got it all cleared up. So I pray that if you're out there, we should have it all cleared up, and you're welcome to please join us in the chat skis. Okay, and I'll mention that again later in case he comes in later. But again, we thank you so much for joining us. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Herman, our hermano.
Okay. Hello, everyone. All right, folks, as always, let's do a quick review. It's going to be pretty quick. It will be a sprint. Okay, Bob, let me know, please.
Yep, just got a couple of things here.
Okay, folks, so last week we covered verses 8 through 12 of chapter 16. And with that, we completed the second episode. Today, we're going to go into the third one. Samson plays with Delilah, making her look like a fool before the Philistine leadership, and this infuriated her. And although the ambushers are waiting in the inner room, some sort of inner room there, and I believe that it was at Delilah's place, there was no mention of fighting. And Bob, I'd like to follow up on something that you mentioned last week regarding a word. So I want to do a quick follow up on what we talked about and also a correction. And I'm hearing a beep, Bob.
Yeah, that's the phone here.
Okay. Shall I continue?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So, Bob, last week you mentioned this, you touched on this word, cahoots, and you thought that it may be somehow connected with the English cahoots. And I went online on several dictionaries online, including the etymology dictionary, online etymology dictionary. And some websites say that the English word cahoots, its etymology is unknown. And there were other sites that said that perhaps it's from the French language.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's any connection with cahoot and cahoots. And as I stated last week, the kaf here is the kaf preposition, which in this case is translated like. Sometimes the ka may be translated as.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
curious about that, because to be in cahoots with someone means you are essentially a co-conspirator or a companion. We're in cahoots, and again, it's definitely not an English word. It's a borrowed word, and that's just so. Okay, so it's not from Ivrit. Okay.
No. Now, in connection with this, I made a blunder because I stated that it may be tow, and the tow regarding to the fiber that comes from the flax, and I confused hoot in this place is conjugated kahut. I confused hoot with neoret, and of verse 9, and that is the word that is translated, that could be understood as tow, not hoot. And just quickly, it's in verse 9, where Delilah says, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson," but he broke the bowstrings as a strand of yarn. And there, tow, and it has the article here, ha neoret, and this is tow, not hoot. So I made a blunder there. And just briefly, being a city boy, I'm not familiar with all of these terms. So I picked up this image online to give the audience an idea of what tow is. And this fiber comes from the flax seed.
So okay.
And from this, of course, then it's wound and you get rope or thread. So this is tow. Alrighty, so moving on. So we're going to continue now with episode 3, which are verses 13 and 14. Bob, is there anything you'd like to share before we go into the text?
Nope. I think we go right ahead.
All right, well, verse 13 is pretty long, so I've divided it into 2 slides. Delilah said to Samson, "Until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me what you may be bound with." And he said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my head into the web of the loom." All right, so he's still playing games. Alrighty, so until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me what you may be bound with. Ad heina he talta vi ve tedaver elai kesavim. Hagida li bame te aser. Okay, so the deceiver, here we find the deceiver, she, of course, the deceiver has the gall to get upset when she is deceived. It's a funny thing, man. This account is so funny. All right, now this time she gets right to the point. In the past, she uses the na, the respectful, the na that it's often translated as please or oh. This time, there's no use of the na. There's no use of the na. She does not say. She doesn't say hagida nali, right? Not this time. She just goes right to tell me. So this time she gets right to the point and demands to know what will make him defenseless and taken prisoner. Because that's really what she's after. She wants to know how to tie him up so that he can be defenseless and taken prisoner.
And she's got a big payday waiting for her.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so then he responds, if you weave the 7 locks of my head into the web of the loom, if, because there's an here and an here. They sound homonyms, they sound the same, but they're homophones, I believe, but they're different. One with the aleph, one with ayin. So Samson says, "Im ta'argi et sheva machlefot roshi im ha masachet." So his hair, he is saying that his hair would be the weft, the horizontal strands, and that the web. So that his hair would be the weft, which would be the horizontal strands, and the web, which he has translated web in this version, is the warp, the vertical strings. Okay, and then of course the loom is the frame. So he's saying that if you weave my hair into the loom, into the frame, then that would weaken me. So in essence, Samson tells her, if you want to bind me, you have to bind my hair in the loom. And he's playing a dangerous game here. So Samson is dangerously close to sabotaging himself by venturing farther and farther into her web. And unfortunately, he will soon eat the bitter fruit of toying with the enemy and devaluating the sign of his consecration.
It's interesting also that it's the web of the loom, that she's like a fly in the web of a black widow spider.
Yeah, well, you caught the pun there. Good, bravo. All righty. So now, with renewed hope, Delilah takes a portable loom, because that's the idea that I get. She takes some sort of portable loom of unknown size and unknown shape to where Samson sleeps. And we see that in the following verse 14, he's sleeping, and she brings it about, right, to bring about her malicious plan. So she brings the loom to him to bring about her malicious plan. And the following images may, and I want to emphasize that it may provide an idea of a portable loom that Delilah may have used. So I have a couple of images here. These are portable looms that you can move around easily, as opposed to these industrial monstrous looms. You're not going to move those around. Okay, so just an idea of portable looms, modern ones, of course. Okay, this here will come into play in a few minutes, this piece here. Okay, Bob, what do you have on 13 before we go on to 14?
Well, again, like you're saying, he's playing very, very, very close to complete disaster, because now he's including the 7 locks.
Yes.
He weaves the 7 locks into the web of the loom, and then she wove it tightly, and he gets out of it. But I'm sure some of his hairs may very well have been ripped off in the process.
Yes.
If your hair is woven into a loom, and you wake up, I'm sure he busted the loom in the process, but I'm sure he couldn't help but lose some of his hairs. So he's getting very, very close to disaster, because each time he mentions the strings, the ropes, they're all symbolic of hair, just like the
Right.
ropes are woven threads that create the web. The bowstrings, they're all, and they're moist. They're lank, like
Right.
wet hair, and so we're getting
Yeah.
closer and closer.
Yes.
It's interesting that with regards to his other riddles, he doesn't give any hints. Didn't give any hints regarding the honey from the carcass, right? Didn't give any hints there
Right.
out of the riddle itself. And here she's very persistent, and like you said, Herman, this is not something that's all happening in 1 week. It could very well been a little bit long, and I'm sure a lot more fun times that bring him back to
Hmm.
that vulnerable thing where he's going to trust her again. And he says, "No, that's just a coincidence." But every time she says that, Philistines come in and try to attack me, and it's
Right.
it's
Right.
the idea of being bound. It's the idea of being unable to move, which is a scary thing. I mean, people have these nightmares about being buried alive, and you're buried in this confined space, right? And
Hmm.
I might have mentioned that when a baby is in that state of being a very young infant, they need to be swaddled, they need to be confined, and they get comforted by that confining process. There's actually a product that you can buy for your dogs that get nervous during thunderstorms. It's like a wear a coat, because it gives them a sense of comfort, of being embraced and cuddled or whatever. So we need, as we get older, we need to have that, but we also need to have the freedom of movement. And to be bound is a dangerous thing. Even with our digestion, to be bound,
Right.
to be constipated, you're blocked up. You're unable to flow, and it's a frustrating thing. And it can become dangerous. It can become septic
Indeed.
over time. But again, you may be bound with, and which is to be arrested. And again, there's things that are worse than death, and the humiliating torture death is one of them. If they would have just seen him invulnerable and taken their swords, they want to bind him. They want to take him back. An example of him is ultimately they do. They mutilate him, taking his eyes out and such. But
Yep.
so there's things that are worse than death, believe it or not. So we need to pray for the safety and not to get involved in these situations in the first place. And if we went up into a young, beautiful woman named Delilah,
Hmm.
maybe you could say, you know what, maybe not. Maybe I'll skip this.
Yes. I'll pass on this one, right?
Pass on that.
Alrighty, let's move on to verse 14. So she wove it tightly, it being the hair, the locks, tightly with the batten of the loom, and said to him, quote, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson," unquote. But he woke from his sleep and pulled out the batten and the web from the loom. Alrighty. So it says, so she wove it tightly with the batten of the loom. Vatitka ba yated. So unfortunately, the game now brings him closer to downfall, as we have said. Now, I have another image here. Here's the batten or the beater. Some people call it the beater. I had to do a little research on these terms because it's something I wasn't really familiar with. So here is the batten or the beater, and it's used to tighten the weft. And the weft, of course, would be the strands that go horizontally across, as we can see here. And then the warp would be the the vertical strings. But this is the batten or the beater that tightens the weft to tighten the fabric.
It looks like a musical instrument too, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah. So in this case, what she is tightening, well, it says used to tighten the weft. In this case, what she's tightening is Samson's hair to become part of the fabric. But he awoke from his sleep. Vayikatz mi shanato. So one of the things that I ask myself is, how could Samson sleep while she handles his hair and tightens it in the loom? I just don't understand. I mean, I know that some people are deep sleepers, but I mean, there's gotta, at some point, he had to wake up. And so I wonder, is he exhausted by the activities of the day? Or is he in a drunken stupor? Did she drug him? I don't know what's going on here. But the fact that he sleeps through that is kind of mysterious to me. Alrighty, and that's the end of verse 3. Bob, what do you have on 14?
Well, again, the idea of him essentially being woven into the loom. He becomes fabric. He actually is woven into this
Yes.
fabric with his hair. It's a strange image, but he's woven, he's bound into this machine, but still, he's not defeated by it. He manages to get out of it, but it's becoming more and more dangerously.
Yes.
And we see in the next verse that the L word is thrown around, right?
Oh, yeah.
You don't
Oh,
love
yeah.
me. You obviously don't love me. You're not giving me.
The love card.
Yep.
Okay, verse 15. Here we go. Now we're going to enter into the fourth episode, which covers verses 15 through 21. And here, of course, is where we get the downfall. Then she said to him, "How can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me." I can just imagine her tone of voice. "You have mocked me these 3 times and have not told me where your great strength lies." Boy, oh boy. Alrighty, then she said to him, Vatomer Elav. So the beginning of the fourth episode differs by not having the standard, because in the previous 3 episodes, it starts with Delilah said to Samson, Delilah said to Samson, Delilah said to Samson. And we see that in 6, verse 6, 10, and 13. But this episode begins differently than she said to him. The text doesn't say Delilah said to Samson. And I believe the author is preparing his audience for something different. And that difference, of course, is Samson's downfall. I try to pick up these differences, these nuances in the text as I'm studying, whether here or in all the passages, especially when it comes to poetry. I look for odd things in the text, like I said, especially in Psalms, because I believe that those odd things, the odd man that stands out, so to speak, that's a hint. And I think that this is what's going on here. As opposed to Delilah said to Samson in the previous 3 episodes, here it says, then she said to him. Already. How can you say I love you, right? Vatomer elav, eich tomar ahavtich. So in desperation, as you say, Ba, right? The L word. In desperation, Delilah uses love to get her way. And this takes the reader back to chapter 14, verse 16, where his wife, right, the bride, also uses the love card during the wedding feast, because she said, then Samson's wife, right? Then Samson's wife wept on him and said, "You only hate me. You do not love me." So here we find Samson once again. I don't know, man. I just don't understand how could he fall for that cockamamie line. It's like, yo, it's the same line. How can you fall for it? I don't know. It's mysterious. All right, 15. And so then she says, when your heart is not with me, ve libecha ein iti. So she whose heart is far and cold, projects her state, because that's her. That's what she is. She's projecting her state upon Samson. by accusing him of the very thing that she is guilty of. Oh man, you don't love me. Your heart is not with me. Her heart was not with him. And remember that the text says that he loved her, but the text does not say that she loved him. So she's projecting. Okay, verse 15, Bob, before we go on to 16.
Yeah, okay.
What saith thou?
So as she's manipulating him, we're all in agreement to that. So how can you say I love you? Which is probably what he's saying all the time, because she's voluptuous. She's there.
Yes.
Love you, I love you. Oh, I love you, I love you. It's probably
Mhm.
an expression he's using a lot. How can you say that when your heart is not with me? And again, that's a metaphor, because when they embrace, their hearts are side by side, because our hearts are on the
Mhm.
left side. So to embrace, we have two hearts, and they're literally together. But she's saying your heart is not with me. Your heart is not next to me, because you're mocking me. You're taking advantage of me. You know, in today's crew, she might. What's the name of that organization? Me Too, the Me Too movement, and complain and charge that maybe that Samson is taking an abusive relationship with her, maybe using him for rape or whatever, because she's obviously that type of person who would possibly do that. But like you said, it doesn't say Samson, doesn't say Dalila, but it's he and she. And then you have mocked me these three times. This is the ultimate thing. You 3 times you did it. I'm done. I'm done. You haven't told me where your great strength lies. You haven't told me. And 3 times. So this is 3 times. The fourth time is the charm. You got to tell me, or essentially, you got to hit the road, because
Yes.
you don't love me. You want to mock me. You want to make fun of me, and not be aligned with me, to not truly be echad. You know, where the man and the woman are together, they form an intimate unity. But she's saying you're not with me if you don't love me, because she's playing the idea that I'm not just a floozy. You know, if you don't love me, I'm not going to sleep with you. If you don't love me, I'm not a cheap woman. You know, I'm a very respectable woman. You know, but if you say you love me, but you don't, obviously, because your heart is not with me. We are not echad. If you mocked me 3 times and still have not told me where your great strength is.
Mhm.
And again, this is not an immediate thing, as we see in the next verse. It's not an immediate. Okay. Let me tell you. We see that it keeps working its way, working its way. I want to add Wanda's saying some word
Yes.
of truth. She be spitting some wisdom. You know what I'm saying? Because how could Samson dismiss Delilah's determination to find the source of this strength? All the pieces of the
Bob,
puzzle.
Bob, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, Bob. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You've mentioned it twice. The determination, that is what caused her to be "quote unquote" victorious. She never fooled him. She wore him down, and we'll get into that. And
yeah.
pardon the interruption.
It's like the oceans erode the mountains into the
Yep.
sea. That's why
Yep.
the beaches are filled with sand, because of all the wearing down, the determination to find the source of the strength. All the pieces to the puzzle were in place, and Samson was playing games.
Mhm.
And Samson was physically strong, but he was weak in wisdom. Yeah, you know, it's just like the legend of Achilles. Achilles, so he got the Achilles tendon. That
Mhm.
one weak spot behind his heel there, you could defeat him. I mean, cannot beat him, and he's a great warrior. But there it was. It was the one weak spot. You know, just like we were talking about Yoshiyahu, the great Melech, great king of Judah, who an arrow found him,
Oh
you
yes.
know, and killed him. It was a great tragedy, because he was truly a just man. But he thought he could do things his way, and it didn't work out well for him as a result of that. But he was also spared because he was removed before Judah finally came to a destruction. So he didn't get to see the humiliation. Like I said, there are things worse than death. There's humiliation. Just like we see what happens to the Melech when Babylon comes. They take him, they take his sons, they make sure that he sees them all murdered, and then they take his eyes out. So you see how cruel people can be. And that's, again, what Shimshon would fear. Not to be killed on the spot, but to be captured, bound, and helpless, and becoming a plaything, a toy of torture.
Right.
Like a cat and mouse.
Okay. Verse 16. And it came to pass when she pestered him daily, there's the determination. When she pestered him daily with her words, and the word pestering here could be nagging also. She nagged left and right. When she pestered him daily with her words and pressed him, urged him, so that his soul was vexed to death. This is funny, man. I just find it's funny. And how could he do that? Alrighty, let's move on. All right, so when she pestered him daily with her words and pressed him, ki heitikalo vid bareha kol hayamim va te alatsehu. Alrighty, so here are these words here. The key words here: the pestering and the pressing. Here, the pestering and the pressing. So humiliated, frustrated, and likely also pressured by the Philistine leadership. All right, Delilah was compelled to change her tactics, and this is where we see a change now. She's hounding and pestering and nagging. Right, so this time she resorts to continual nagging, determined more than ever. Delilah eroded, and Bob, you mentioned the mountains at the seashore, right? Eroded the strong man's heart as a continual drip erodes a rock. The drip. All right. I think there's a wordplay here as well, and we see it here with the word suk, which when it's conjugated here in the Hifil conjugation, it looks differently. But this is the word here, suk. So Delilah melted, and this is one of the definitions for suk. Delilah melted Samson's will and had him pour out suk, the secret. So I believe there's a wordplay here. And if there were ever a time to leave this woman, this was it. This was it. The daily pestering also reveals that it was somewhat of a long-term relationship. So I think there's a wordplay here, suk, and here it is here, heitzika. All right. Many times the yud will convert to a waw, or there's always that interchange. I've noticed that in Hebrew a lot, that the vav or waw converts with the yud, but that's a different issue. Alrighty, so Delilah's sex appeal only went so far, folks. That only went so far. It was her persistence, however, that did the trick. And as believers, we too are to use the principle of persistence, but for good. And as the New Testament teaches, right, we are to keep seeking, we are to keep asking, we are to keep striving. And I know that many times we get frustrated and we get discouraged, but we are commanded to continue seeking, asking, and striving. And I have two passages here in Yeshua's teachings regarding the persistent widow, right? The persistent neighbor in Luke 11, and then we have also the persistent widow in Luke 18, where she constantly going before the judge, right? Take my case, judge me, right? Judge in my favor. And then the persistent neighbor right? I need some bread. I have a visitor that's come to visit me. So this is a principle that we are to use, but for good. The principle of persistence. Alrighty. I think, okay, yeah, the word alats, and she pressed him. Vate alatsehu. And it's interesting because a person will look at this and say, oh, this is just one word. But in reality, this is four words. And she, and, or so she pressed him. So now the New King James translators don't put she in here, but here is the um, the prefix indicating she, feminine. Alrighty, so I found this very interesting. The Gemara in the Talmud, the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of and urged him? Right, because here the New King James and pressed him or urged him. How did she do? How did she do so? Rabbi Yitzchak says, at the moment immediately before his completion of the act of intercourse, she slipped away from beneath him. By doing this, she urged him to reveal his secret. And we find this in Sota 9b, line 18. And I have recommended this website for those that like to do research in rabbinic literature, sefaria.org. Okay, so if you have a question or you need to do some insight in rabbinic literature, this is the website. You have a lot. It's amazing the amount of material that's on this website. All right, so I found this commentary very interesting regarding the word alats, to urge or to press. All right, and then it says, so she kept pestering him so that his soul was vexed to death. Vatiktsar nafsho lamut. So why endure the grief? Really, I ask myself, why endure that grief? Was it really, really worth it? Okay, and it's beyond me how a person can stay in this type of relationship. It really is beyond me. And I guess he really, really loved her. He didn't want to lose her. That's the only thing that will make sense to me. Or he was bewitched by her, or both. Okay, Bob, I know it's a long one. I'll give you a moment, okay? Okay, so his soul was vexed to death. So besides Samson, and I think there's another word play here, besides Samson growing tired of enduring, because he couldn't endure anymore, he was vexed, he couldn't endure, katsar. So besides Samson growing tired of enduring her nagging, the Hebrew poetically communicates that Samson's soul or his life was shortened, katsar. So I think there's another word play here, and it was shortened to the point of death. Okay, revealing her insistence and also revealing his affliction. But there's a twist, like in the rest of the story, a lot of twists and turns in this whole story. All right, there's a twist here, because as Delilah shortens his life, his soul, because that's what the text says, and here's the word here, vatiktsar, she vexed, so she shortened. As Delilah shortened his soul, his life, in pursuit of money, she shortened her own soul, her own life. Okay, and I get that from Proverbs and from Timothy. Proverbs 1 says, so are the ways of everyone who is greedy for gain. The greediness for money, takes away the life of its owner. So that's why I say that as she shortened his soul, her soul was being shortened simultaneously.
Yeah.
And 1 Timothy 6, very well-known passage. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, and she was enticed to richness, and they fall into a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men and women into destruction and perdition. So she was shortening her life. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, for which some, having strayed from the faith in their greediness, in their greediness, and pierced themselves, there's the shortening of the life, pierced themselves through with many sorrows. So that's why I want to emphasize this. There's a twist here in the story. She shortens his life, but she's also shortening her own life. All right, Bob, that was a long one. What do you have on 16?
When you mentioned the cutting short, looking at the root of the word katsar, it can mean to discourage, to grieve, but also to cut down.
Yes.
And the other thing I see that I notice is, again, she pestered him, she pressed him, she vexed him. There's a progression there, going from annoyance to truly being disturbed to surrender, because he truly does love her. That's his weakness. He's like a playboy. She's out there gambling, doing this and that, and then he finally finds a woman that just knocks his socks off, and he becomes her toy. It's like, wow.
Hey, wait a minute, Bob. She didn't knock his socks off. She knocked his sandals off.
Right. True that. And the other thing that I think is interesting, and let's see, when we go to Psalm 1:1,
right?
I see a similar.
Right, the progression, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Blessed is the man, and then blessed, or Ashereh, happy, content is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. So the ungodly, the sinners, the scornful are all part of that character that the blessed man does not engage in. And we see the progress that first he walks not in the counsel, nor stands in the path. All of a sudden you're walking along, something catches your attention, you stop, you look, and before you know it, you're sitting down and putting yourself in a position of ruin, because you are now in the seat of the scornful. Then contrasting to that, his delight is in the Torah of Yah, and in his Torah he meditates day and night. So I just thought, when I see the pestered, pressing, and vexation,
very nice.
It's a similar idea of his ruin, and it's like all of a sudden everything's kind of slowing down. Everything is kind of like it's catching up. It's like all these events seem to be going so fast. All of a sudden now, your heart is not with me. And because he is saying that he loves her, she's questioning the validity of that statement. You don't love me. You're only using me. And it kills him. It destroys him, because he truly does. So the trickster is being tricked, sort of like Yaakov, remember? He was the trickster. He was the supplanter. And even under the direction of his mother, he realized that, hey, I don't know, this kind of feels skeevy that I'm wearing Esau's clothes, and I got this lambskin on, and I'm deceiving. I'm actually deceiving. So there's a guilt there, even though we know earlier on that Esau hated his birthright anyway, and sold it to Yaakov.
Mm-hmm.
So they could have presented the receipts to Isaac, right? Yitzhak, they should have shown him the receipts. No. Here is the receipt. I am the elder. I am the eldest. I do deserve to be blessed over my brother. So, when things slow down, we have a propensity either to get trampled or to really have a moment of clarity. And that's really what Yah gives us. He gives us that clarity in special moments. That's why when we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another. We're koinonia. We have common grounds. We're working together. And the same thing with the body of Messiah. I felt so terrible about blocking my beautiful friend, me, who's finding a lot of good in what we're teaching here. And just the thought that he could have gotten upset and said, well, like, obviously he doesn't want to hear from me, so I guess I'll go on to the next YouTube or whatever. But I thank you that you were on tonight, man. I really am. And that reached you in time. So again, I think it's sad when we see the progress, when we see, the person is what's the word I'm looking for? How addictions can take their toll. Here he is a young man, and he's at a party trying. Hey, try some Coke. Try some Coke. You like pot? Pot's great, but try some Coke. This is really good. Whoa! It gives you this great feeling. Okay, and then from there it says, hey, we got this really good horse, as they say. It's called heroin. Let's try this. Yeah. You were right about the cocaine, and the heroin was even better. And the adversary is such a cheat that first high is so high that you will sell your wife and children so that you can have that high. You can achieve that level of high again. So again, but what happens? You were a young man, perfectly healthy, and you go fast forward a couple of years, and you're homeless. You're all scabbed up. You're filthy. You're destitute. You're saying, "Oh, is it?" They mock. When we insist on the gateway drugs are equally manipulative, just like Delilah. Initially, she's not a murderess, and yet slowly but surely he's taken advantage of. He says she must love me. I'm finally in love, and I have this relationship that's going on. That's as opposed to any previous relationships, perhaps that didn't last as long. So it came to pass. What does that mean? How long was this process? The answer is the process was as long as it needed to take for it to be successful, because of her determination and her willingness to come out ahead, to come out and not realize how she's abusing this man who says and shows how much he loves her. I mean, how many gifts has he brought her? How many poems has he recited for her? Because he's a poet. How many things has he given her from his very soul, from his nefesh? We don't get any of that details, but I don't doubt that's what happened. I'm sure he showered her with affection, with gifts, and all these wonderful things. And she could think nothing of it but see him as being a sap, as being somebody that she can twist. And some of these people, whether it's a beautiful woman or whatever, they wrap you around the finger. I think they can do that. And in many cases they can. And they will ruin you. They will ruin you.
Yeah.
Absolutely ruin you.
Yeah. Bob, I like how you tied it in the pressing, the urging, and the vexing, that progression. That was very nice. And then tying it in with Psalm 1. Very nice. That was good.
Amen.
Okay. 17, it's a pretty long verse. I have it divided into 2 slides. Okay, so after the vexing, that he told her all his heart. What a blunder. And said to her, quote, no razor has ever come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man, unquote. Alrighty, that he told her all his heart. Va yaged la et kol livo. This is the mistake of his life, folks. And despite the fact that at times Samson is endowed mightily with the Spirit, he chooses to suppress common sense, a mystery. How could it be possible that the Spirit operates in him mightily in one area, and yet he suppressed? He has to. It's just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling that the Spirit can work in his life. He had to suppress it. And why on earth reveal a vital secret to a person that cannot be trusted. A lot of mysteries there. So this saga, in my opinion, this saga is nothing more than a psychological chess match. Samson knows that Delilah cannot be trusted, and yet he continues to play along, believing that he'll be victorious, but he winds up dead wrong eventually. So, folks, never inform your enemy of your weak and strong points, because they will surely use that information against you. So, in essence, Samson reveals two things. He reveals the why and the what. Why he is so strong? Because he's a Nazarite, right? Because of his Nazarite covenant with Yah. And what will weaken him? What weakens him is his blatant disregard for the covenantal sign. Is here. That disregard for the covenantal sign. And folks, if there is anything that you are disregarding in your life, and you know your life, you know what you're doing, right? So if there's anything that you are disregarding in your walk with the Lord, please be very careful. Okay? Be very careful.
I could see again there's a parallel with Esau also, right? That he did not think highly of the breed of the covenantal sign.
Correct.
Was willing to give it away for a bowl of soup.
Correct. Good point. Yes. Disregarding the gifts, man, the gifts and the blessings.
Yes.
Okay, no razor has ever come upon my head. Mora lo Allah al Roshi. So the razor, folks, the razor is the last straw. Once Samson himself caused the removal of the covenantal sign, because he caused that, the Lord decided it was time for serious disciplining. Remember, this is the 4th episode, so he already had 3 strikes against him. Okay, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. Ki Nazir Elohim ani, mi beten imi. So weakened by immorality, he lacked the ability to retain the secret of his strength. And we see the same thing with the wifey, right? He told her the secret, and somehow he has this inability to retain secrets. So I think that what he believed to be an insignificant conversation, or maybe important to him, but maybe an insignificant conversation, turned out to be the very thing that led to his downfall. And sometimes, folks, we may perceive to be involved in an innocent conversation, and it can have severe consequences. That's why we have to guard ourselves and what we say, what we disclose.
I mean, how about a little touch of irony that when he has this chat with her, what is he having? He's having a heart to heart. Laying it all out there.
Yes.
Nothing back.
Yes. How can you say you love me? Your heart is not with me. And he revealed his heart to her, right? Good point, Bob. Good one. All right. So so sometimes what we perceive to be innocent words or innocent deeds have severe consequences. Okay. And I have Proverbs chapter 2. And here are the verses. And of course, I abbreviated it. Discretion will preserve you. And this is something that I teach my family when we have family devotions. So be very careful. You don't have to disclose everything that's going on in your life. You don't have to disclose everything that other people share with you. Discretion will preserve you. Understanding will keep you. To deliver you from the way of evil, to deliver you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words. For her house leads down to death. And I think that Samson was in her place, because it says that the men were in the inner room. I don't think it was in his place. For her house leads down to death, and her paths to the dead. Proverbs chapter 2. So he continues, if I am shaven, I shall become weak. Im gulachti, ... Ve hayiti. So folks, we must not be among those who believe that once grace is given from on high, that it will stick with you like glue, no matter how you live. That is not the case. We have to be very careful. Have to be very careful. Grace is not going to stick to us if we continually live outside of the Lord's parameters. And Paul touches on that in Galatians 6. This is the Net translation, the New English translation. Paul says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. Well, it's funny because I'm used to reading it in the New King James and I'm just reciting it. God will not be made a fool, for a person will reap what he sows, because the person who sows to his own flesh will reap corruption from the flesh, but the one who sows to the Spirit will reap eternal life from the Spirit. Galatians 6. Alrighty, so if I am shaven. So folks, hair, and I know there may be some out there that may think that Samson's power was in his hair. I do not believe that the power was in his hair. Hair is simply hair, and as such, there's no power in hair. It was merely the sign of his covenantal Nazarite status. If his hair had the power, he would have prayed to his hair when he finds himself in a bind. And we see that in chapter 15 and also in chapter 16. He doesn't pray to his hair. He prays to the Eternal One. That's where his power came from. So the Lord winked over Samson's defilement with animal and human corpses, and possibly with the wine at the wedding. It's possibly, although the text doesn't say that he drank, but possibly. But at this point, it is at this point that Samson crossed the line with the hair. He crossed the line. And it's an interesting concept because we all live a certain way, and my line may not be your line. I may come to a point where I cross the line and there's no return, and that's it. And for you, it may be different. But for Samson, it was at this point that he crossed the line by revealing that. So Samson's confession contained a double meaning, another play on words. I believe there's another play on words here regarding the expression, my strength will leave me. So on the one hand, when he says that my strength will leave me, it refers to his physical power, right? Because then later on in verse 19, it says, then she, Delilah, began to torment him and his strength left him. So that's one meaning. But secondly, and the more devastating meaning regarding my strength will leave me, points to Yah, to the Eternal One, for he is Samson's strength. And indeed, he left him for that moment. And in verse 20, it says, but he, Shimshon, did not know that Yahweh had departed from him. So yes, his strength did leave him. His physical power left him, and the one who endowed him with the power left him. So there's a play there, a double meaning. Then I shall become weak. Ve-hayiti, ve-hayiti. So although on previous occasions, Delilah heard that I shall become weak, right? Because she heard that 3 times, and here are the verses. This time, she is convinced. She's convinced when he said what he said and he revealed his heart. She was convinced that this time he's saying the truth. Now, perhaps Samson's eye contact, perhaps his facial expression, perhaps the tone of voice persuaded her. But this time she believed it, and the witch is now ready to betray her unloved lover. So it is indeed mysterious. Why would Samson divulge the secret information to a person that has openly stated her intentions of harming him? Perhaps pride? If pride prevented Samson from ending this deadly game, then it behooves us, folks, to take heed to the following verses, and I've got a few more verses from Proverbs because pride is a killer. Proverbs 11 and Proverbs 16. When pride comes, then comes shame, but with the humble is wisdom. And pride goes before destruction, a well-known passage, and a haughty spirit before a fall. So if it was pride that prevented Samson from turning away from this relationship, he reaped the consequences, unfortunately. Okay, Bob, do you have anything on verse 17?
Yes, indeed. I wanted to share. Henry B. Hank says, Samson was strong by the Ruach of Elohim, by the Spirit of Yah, but his own carnal desires overcame him. And that's very true. But also, I wanted to go back for a moment when you talked about the hair was a covenant sign. That was
Right.
a covenant sign. But we today, we have a covenant sign also. And it's controversial, but what does the word say? It says, above all, my Sabbaths you shall keep, for they are an oath. They are a covenant sign between me and you throughout your generations. So again, when you weaken the Sabbath, or where we neglect the Sabbath, in fact, that's why Yehuda was finally captured by the Babylonians, because they were rejecting the annual Sabbaths for the land. So that's an interesting thing, that we hold fast to the covenant agreement. What does it stipulate? And the other thing I wanted to say, again, with the play on words situation, I want to look at the word for razor, morah.
Morah, yes.
And the words can also mean to remove, to change, and to dispose. So there you go. The act of the razor itself does nothing, but the actions of one who wields, it's like the Second Amendment about the use of a weapon, the illegal use of a gun, right?
Mm-hmm.
99.9% of all gun violence is done by illegal weapons or their suicides. And so the thing is, it's not the gun that's doing it, it's the people who pull the trigger. So here is the razor announcing it's there to remove, dispose, and to change. And that's all happens to Samson in response to him. Again, he's like a baby. He does not want to lose her. He loves her so much, or he's so infatuated, because love is something you have to share. And she obviously does not share this love. He's so overwhelmed that, yes, he has this heart-to-heart with her. He says, okay, you're right. And just like the little the dam breaking, right? It's a little leak here and there, but ultimately dam could burst.
Right.
The whole village could be flooded. So it starts off like the one pebble rolling down the hill, which turns into a landslide. So the warnings are there for us. We need to pay attention, and pride goes before destruction. We can't think that we're too big to fall, because when we start boasting about our ability to overcome, and that'll never happen to me, watch out.
And how?
There's only one Elohim. There's only one. You're not going to be, sharing duties there.
Yep. And how, Bob, I'd like to leave it here. Next week, folks, we'll continue with verse 18. We're still in the 4th episode. And so we'll continue next week with verse 18. Thank you so much for your attention, and also for your comments.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, brethren, brothers and sisters. It's great to have you guys once again.
What am I doing here? I did something wrong.
I don't know.
Let's see. Yes, I know what.
It's okay.
Okay.
There we go.
There you go. Sorry, folks.
That's okay. But again, we're so grateful that you would join us live to chat. And again, I'm so grateful to see Neat here and to see Hank there as well as Wanda. That's let's see, anybody else? That's good. Anyone else? And me, right? Me. And anyone else who would join us later on. We're grateful for your company as well. And please, next week we're getting close to the finale. And in the meantime, this coming Shabbat at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will be here for our Shabbat Torah service and our honoring of Yah. So please join us then if you would. And we will be here next Wednesday at 7:30, midweek, MIDrash. And we thank you so much.
Yes, Lord.
For now, we just pray, Abba. I just pray for the safety and the well-being of your people, your special, unique people, Father. And we thank you so much that we've come to know many people through this unique channel of communication. And just a few years ago, I never would have considered doing any of this, but I thank you for being with us, bearing with my impatience, with my whatever. And I just pray for special blessings for all of your special people, for that we would feel your special comfort. And as we're reading the downfall of one individual who was consecrated from birth, thought that he was too good to be true, and it was. So anyway, let us be faithful always, Abba. We give you thanks for all things. Watch over our families and keep us close to you. And we thank you in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
And for now, we say Laila Tov Ulehitraot. We say good night. Be well, be strong, and also we will check you out a little further down the road.
Amen.
So, shalom, shalom.
Shalom.